Good evening, everybody. Oh my goodness, that works, doesn't it? It's amazing, this place. Everything works. It's so nice to see you all, and welcome to this lovely new Lewington room, which is so exciting to be using, really for the first time properly since it was done. And it's lovely to have you all here. We are here to talk to Frank. Now, a lot of you will know Frank, and we'll get to that in a minute. But before I do that, I ought to tell you things like where the loos are and what to do if it all bursts into flames and things like that, because these things need to be done. The only exit from this room is through that door there. So quietly, please, ladies and gentlemen, if the fire is burning, down the stairs and out into the courtyard. There are assembly points, actually, but I won't bore you with them because they're mainly in the church square, which is probably where you go anyway. And the loos are downstairs as well, if you need them. There are, I think, only one open probably, but it's the one just beside the front door. And welcome to the room. Now, as I've said, I think many of you will know Frank quite well. Some of you will have known him all your lives. Very few of you will probably know that, oh, I must do better than that in future, that once upon a time he looked like that. It's a lovely picture, and it's a great smiley face, and I think I'm delighted to be able to introduce him with such a wonderful image. This is on the front of his book. Now, we're not going to go through the book, not going to go through all the things that Frank has written about his life. We're going to talk instead slightly about what this village was like all those years ago, if you'll forgive me saying so, Frank, when he was a child, and how different it is from life now. But first of all, I know Frank wants to say thank you to one or two people, so I'm going to hand him my microphone, because it's switched on, unless you want to use that one. Here we go. To be introduced, Hudson.
Okay. Thank you very much for that introduction. Good evening to you all. This is my first attempt at this, so bear with me, please. First of all, actually, I would like to thank one or two people that really helped me along the way. My first thanks go to Janet Rouse over there for putting the idea in my head some two years ago or more, probably. I say I thank her for that, but also I blame her for many sleepless nights in lying in bed and thinking, well, what should I put next, or did I put that right, or whatever, you know. So thank you, Janet. The second person is Tim Gush for inserting all the photos in my book. Obviously, I just passed the photos over, or emailed the photos over to him, and he sorted them out and put them in places I'd asked for them to go. Also for a lady named Gianna Baxter, who is my wife's nephew's wife. She, difficult to say that. She is the person who proofread it for me and found many mistakes, which Tim also put right for me when he read it all through again. The last people I would like to thank is or some more just coming in, my friends of mine. Get a glass. Yes, I would finally like to thank the archives for getting it printed for me, and thinking that people will be interested in my life in this book. So I hope it does. I've done it justice, you know. I honestly don't know. I've had 50 printed, so I think, you know, if we get rid of half of those, should be lucky. But that's about all as far as I go at the moment. So.
Thanks, Frank. That's brilliant. But you can hang on to that one if you like. It's just, you don't need to turn it off and on.
Okay.
It does its stuff. So, what I'm now going to do, just on the basis of what one should always do in life, is to tell people what you're going to do, then do it, and then tell them what you've done, which is a sort of way in which life works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and fish from Frank an image of what it was like growing up in this extraordinary village. He you know, they tell you when you arrive here that there is no way you will ever be considered a local in the first generation of living here, however long you live. You simply have to have at least 2 generations. Well, Frank has several. He's definitely a local. He has inside information about what this village used to be like. Now, Frank, you were born in 1936, and very quickly you went to live in Castle View. For those of you who might not know where Castle View is, it's a house which used to be a farm right opposite, well, it's difficult to describe this, just before the bridge as you go down Bridge Street on the left-hand side. I noticed that the people who live there now are not here tonight. So
No, not.
disappointing.
No, not yet.
Do you think they've kept away on purpose, Frank?
I don't know.
Now, Frank, tell me about this house. This was one of the many small farm yards and farms in the centre of the village at
Yes.
the time.
Yes, there were many farms in Bampton in those days, back in the 60s even, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got a list here actually of some of the farms, I think. Don't know. No, probably not on here. But yes, there were many farms, especially down Weald. I mean, there was a Rouses, there was a Collex, there was a Collins and so forth.
Yeah.
But all over Bampton there were many farms, and one of them, as you say, is at Castleview, was my grandfather's farm. If I can just cut in there and give you a quick history of my life, so you'll know, it'll fit things together for you perhaps a bit better. I was born, as I say, in 1936 in number 5 Broad Street, Bampton. My mother unfortunately died some weeks after I was born. So I was brought up by my grandparents at Castleview in Bridge Street. This is the farm we're talking about. To talk about being brought up by them, I understand there were 3 families would look after me after my mother died. One was my mother's sister and her husband, who's the butchers down in Red Hill in Surrey. Another one was my dad's brother, who lived in Barking in London, and my grandparents. And I think I say in the book that I was really, looking back, I'm probably glad that my grandparents won. I wouldn't have wanted to live in Barking. I must admit, my auntie and uncle in Red Hill in Surrey, they were wonderful, they were lovely to me. I had many holidays down there, which I talk about again in the book. So there I ended up with my grandparents at Castleview Farm in Bridge Street, Bampton. I schooled in Bampton, then as an 11-year-old I went to Burford Grammar School, which wasn't the school it is today, I don't think. You know, the teachers there, I know I was younger obviously, but they all seemed very elderly. And Ron, my friend over here, would probably relate to that. He was with me. By the way, we've got, well, Perce is not here, but there's another lad, Perce Dixie, who lives in Whitney actually. We're right closely, born in the same month, I think. Ron, you're the 6th, isn't it? Yeah, Perce was the 8th, and mine's the 26th of March, so we were really close friends, you know. But yes, we went to Burford Grammar School, being taken there with Bax coaches each day and brought back, and it was all right. But the teachers weren't really up to it. I mean, our maths teacher, he would often come in and say, "Now lads, do you want some maths or do you want me to tell some jokes?" Guess what we said? It was like that. They were really, looking at them and looking back now, they were old fuddy-duddies, as I call them. Anyway, it did me no harm, I suppose. I left the school in 1952 and started work as an apprentice motor mechanic at the garage in Corn Street in Whitney. And also went to the technical college one day a week. This was a very a good upbringing in mechanics, because in those days, working on vehicles, you actually repaired things. You didn't, like today, change things. I mean, they're not mechanics today, they're technicians. Very good technicians, I must admit, because they have to be, because it's all plug in this, and as you all know, cars of the day, you lift the bonnet and you don't know what to do. And I'm a mechanic, so there you are. So I was at the Corn Street at the garage there, so I say it was a good upbringing. Then in 1957, I'd finished my 5-year apprenticeship, because that deterred you from going into the army. Anyway, so I went in 1957, did my 2 years national service with the REME, registration reg number 234-29375. I didn't have to look at that. You never forget that number. What's yours, Ron?
2303916.
There you are. So, you had to say that every time you drew your pay at the end of the week. Sir. Yeah, but it was a good, I don't know, hardening off of a person. I think, I came out better than when I went in, perhaps, so I really couldn't say I enjoyed it, but I didn't disenjoy it. Yes, and in the army I just did 11 months in this country, and then 13 months in a workshop in Germany. That was my, they did want me to, they made me a Lance Corporal about 2 months before I was due to come out. That was only an incentive to get you to sign on and stay in the army, but that wasn't for me. So on demand I came out. I must tell you this, because I think I put it in the book, I'm not sure. Anyway, I will tell you. I came out on the Thursday, I think it was, and not for that Saturday, but the following Saturday, I did the Vernon's football pools. And lo and behold, I had 24 points, which was the maximum points. But unfortunately, there's always a downside. Many other people had 24 points. But I did get about £21 some odd, so it wasn't too bad, for that time of the year, that year. Anyway, so I came out of that and demobbed, worked at Smith's Industries on the A40. They were a big company in those days, making heaters for cars, because many cars you bought in those days did not have a heater in it. That was an extra. Besides that, they made air moving equipment and hydraulics and various other things. They were a big company. In probably about 1960-63, there was 3,000 people there working at Smith's, coming from all over the area, obviously, as you know. But I did cycle there to start with, and eventually I bought a car, and we went by car. But that was the way things went. But yes, I worked for Smith's Industries for about I worked for Smith's, and then for the last 5 or 6 years of my working life, I worked for an American company called Vida Root, because Smith's closed down up there, and so I had to find another job. This was Vida Root, was an American company, as I say, and they did. They took over a company that was just developing contents gauging for petrol or fuel storage tanks electronically, and so we had to fit these on sites, garages and forecourts and service stations. Well, all anywhere the tanks that held fuel were about, we fitted those. Then comes to I married my wife Anne, who I met at Smith's. And we lived in her flat for 6 months in Old Marston in Oxford. But after coming out of a 5-bedroom farmhouse and going into a 2-bedroom flat with no garden or anything, it wasn't for me. So we moved to Alvescot in 1974. We only had 6 months in this flat, so that was long enough for me in that flat. I know we were just married, you know, but you want something to do. Yes, we looked for a flat, and we found looked for a house or a bungalow we really wanted. We looked in Bampton, but there was none available that we could afford anyway. And so I had a footballer, a friend that played football with, and found out that he'd had his bungalow at Alvescot on sale for some considerable time. So anyway, we went and had a look at it, and as soon as we walked inside, really, we said, yeah, this is the place for us. And I think that you go where your gut feeling, I'm quite honest. So we did buy it. That was in Lower End there, and we've had a very good 49 year there. No, 48 years we've had there, and really enjoyed it. And you talk about small villages and nothing goes on, perhaps, you know, or people that don't live in smaller villages think that nothing goes on, but there's an awful lot goes on. I know in Bampton, an awful lot, but in Alvescot it's just the same. I mean, this year we had, I've got to make sure I put in the right order really, we had the Jubilee party. So the road was closed down Lower End where we live, which is a nose-through road anyway. We closed the road, and about 120 people we had down there on the Jubilee party, and it was a lovely day, lovely Saturday. The next Saturday we had the women's cycle race come through the village, so that was exciting. The following weekend was the village fete, which Anne and myself and 2 other elderly people were asked to open. So we did that, and mind you, we didn't need to remind that we were elderly, but still. And then after a few weeks after that, we had our safari supper. Now, I don't know whether any of you know about safari supper, where you go to each other, different houses for different courses. It's a wonderful way of meeting different people in the village. We all meet up in someone's big house for drinks and canapes to start with, and then you're given a piece of paper to say you're going to so-and-so, and then you find that there's 6 other people there, so you have 8 there, you have your first course there. After the first course at a certain time, that host there gives you a piece of paper to say where you're going to next and so on. So you go around, then you finish up in another big house for about 11 or 12 o'clock for drinks and cheese and biscuits, like, you know. So it's as I say, there's a lot goes on in the village. And then finally, in 1998, I retired and enjoyed myself. So that's my life in a nutshell. Like.
That's very good, Frank. That's very good. I'd just like to get can I take you back to your childhood, your really young childhood? Because I want to try and get I'm fascinated by the way this place has changed. I want to know, for example, whether your really young life was much like mine, in that you were told to go out and play in the early morning and not to come back till later. And did you play in the local farms and that kind of thing? Tell me what your life was like.
I wouldn't say I was told to go. I wouldn't say I was told to go out. As I say, it's in this farmhouse, and my gran and grand were wonderful to me. I've got nothing against them. They were wonderful. Especially Gran, she was an awful, you know, she was my mother in fact. But, and I was never short of money, as regards, you know, given the 6 months, but I had to earn it.
Yep.
And I did have to earn it. It was either clean the brass, scrub the flagstone floor down the hallway, weed the garden, or do other things around the house.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as I say, that was the way it was then with Gran and Gramp. So
well, I suspect that's true. That rings true to many people in this room.
Yeah.
That sense that you had to of having to earn your pocket money.
Yeah, just bring. There's 2 of my money boxes up here, which I speak about in in the book again, but I've got 2 money boxes there. One is, there's no coloured people here, but there's a black man there, which was a money box in those days, and the other shiny one, the chromy one, is a Midland Bank. It's a Midland Bank one, which it's got slots in there, and you put your monies in there, and when it's full up, you take it. Well, there was a Midland Bank in the village then, but it's HSBC now.
This isn't actually at all at the moment, I think.
No. But Midland is HSBC.
Yeah, HSBC.
But when that was full up, you took it to the bank, and they had a key. You didn't have a key at all. They took it to the bank, and they emptied it and put it in your savings account. So, but going back to that, just quickly, as another thought come into my head. I met a fellow a few years ago now, and he said, "I always remember you at Bampton School." I said, "Oh yeah, how do you remember me then?" He said, "You had a watch." So, things like that comes out. But,
well, Frank, listen, you've done wonders telling us about your life, and I'm delighted by that. Thank you very much for that.
Was the farm actually still a working farm, or was it just...
Oh no, it was a working farm. No, I can tell you a bit about the farm, yes, sorry. Yes, Gramp, he was landlord of the Elephant Castle. My grandfather was born in Aston. In Cote. He was a journeyman baker when he got married, working out of Kingston Parkviews. They moved to Bampton in 1912 and took over the Elephant Castle, which he ran until 1935. Before then he moved. While he was at the Elephant Castle, he was a bit of an entrepreneur, actually. Grant was. He had a horse and buggy that he would go up to the station and bring people back or do trips around or whatever. He also had he bred pigs, not bred pigs, he raised pigs. He'd buy the what they call weaners, the small pigs, and fatten them up and then sell them on to the market or to the abattoirs. And when he transferred across, I suppose it was a progression for him. He bought Castle View across the road in 1935 and moved across the road there and had more room to expand, if you like, with pigs and so forth. He also had a coal business there, and he was a bit, as I say, he was a bit of an entrepreneur. He was into everything, if you like. He even used to drive the horses for the fire brigade in the early days, and he used to go to markets and won many fat stock shows at Christmas with his pigs mainly, and he progressed from there on really. So I used to like working in the yard actually. He would have me around there, or he had 2 sons working on the farm and another fellow called Percy Radband. Perky Radband, he was always known as Perky. I'll tell you a story about him in a minute. Yeah, he had those working on the farm with him, and they had 2 old Fordson, standard Fordsons they're called, standard Fordson tractors. And he had fields down Buckland Road, Aston Road, and one up Clanfield Road. Just before there used to be 2 bungalows there, and now there's one house built, the other one's, I think, being built or something, or going to be built. That field just before that was Gramps, which was a lovely mushroom field just in sort of September, October. You used to get some lovely mushrooms from there. But no, he was a bit of an entrepreneur, and I know my father worked for, I forget his name now, Wright I think it was, at the farm down Weald. And then when, I think it must have been before Grant moved from the Elephant Castle, because at that time in 1921 he bought an old well, not an old, a new Ford, Model T Ford lorry for his exploits. And my father drove it a lot for him, you know, so he must have joined Grant sometime before then. But I lost the thread now.
Well, you read.
He was, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's just, so you were in the farm.
Yes, Bampton, yeah, and he used to. Grant used to, as I say, do all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Let me just have a look anyway. I just lost the thread now.
You
Sorry.
said he was.
You haven't mentioned Dora.
Yeah, I want to know about Dora.
Oh yes, probably some of you knew Dora. Yeah, well, Dora was my aunt. Grandpa had my mother was the firstborn, and then there was Gladys, who's the one that lived down in Red Hill or Nutfield. Then they moved to Red Hill, the butchers. Then next was Uncle's son, Thomas Townsend. He always known as Sonner. And then there was Jack, and then there was Dora. She was born in 1921, which she lived in the village, and obviously, and she lived in the house after Grant died. She lived in Castleview for some few years, and then sold it off and moved into a care home, actually. Well, no, not a care home, into the flats, the lanes, yeah. So, yeah, that was basically, there was many, I mean, I'd say I loved working in the farm. I used to help clean the pigs out in certain days, you know, they used to do it probably about twice a week in the pigsties. People don't realise that pigs are a very clean animal. I mean, all right, they muck one end of the sty, but the other end where they sleep, it's always nice and clean. So what you do, you just go and clean them out, as I say, about twice a week. You take all the muck out, bring the old straw from where they've been sleeping to where they're going to mess next time, put new straw in, and they're as clean as anything. You know, they never get mucky at all. They are a very clean animal, but people really don't realise this. But,
And what about when the elephant and castle had the fire attached to that?
As I say, I went over to Germany for 13 months. I went over on the Thursday, and it was a Sunday, the elephant and castle burnt down, which was some reservation on to why it caught fire, but I won't go into that. But no, I think Grant was a very good landlord there, and I know that they had some right times in that pub in those days, which they did in all pubs. I mean, back in those days, well, I remember 11 pubs, and I'm sure, well, many people, Ron would remember probably not 11 pubs as well in this village. My grandmother used to say, she had many times, that in her youth, there were 22 places in Bampton you could buy intoxicating liquor. So it went down a bit. But there were many pubs, and good ones, and we used to have some really good times, you know, as youngsters and elderly as well, you know. Used to meet some, as youngsters, it was, I want to say youngsters, about 17, 18 we'd get in there and start drinking. But start with the Eagle, we used to get just down the road here. A chap named Ernie Martin kept it, Mr. and Mrs. Martin. And we used to go in there and meet the elderly in there and listen to their tales. And it was wonderful, you know, we had some really good nights in there, and we played poor old Ernie Martin up something wicked, I mean. Well, not us, but even these old boys did. I mean, there was a chap named Di Horn, who was a hay cutter. He used to go and cut the ricks of hay for the, you know, they didn't have sort of balers and that in those days and all that, so he used to go and cut the ricks. And he was in there one day with us and some other old boys there, and he said to Ernie, he said, "Oh, I'll have a cider, please, Ernie." And that pub, there was no bar, it was a room, I would say, no larger than, well, it wouldn't be as wide as this, and it would go out to about that table, so you could get, well, I'll tell you in a minute. Anyway, he was in there one night, he said, I'll have a pint of cider, please, Ernie. So off he went down the cellar, and you had to walk out, down some steps, quite a deep cellar, it's a beautiful cellar down there. And he come back up with this cider and he put it to Ernie and he would go and get another drink. When he come back up with the other drink, Ernie, this Dior said, "Hey Ernie," he said, "there's an apple in my cider," he said. And Ernie come over and had a look, picked it out. "Oh, I don't know how that got in there," he said. And just went off, you know. But oh, we did have some fun in there. Another time we decided to see how many we would get in there, because there was only 3 sides, and they had just old church seats in there. There was really, and we thought, how many can we get in there? We got 14 in there this one night. We were sat there like this, and of course Ernie was there and said, "Right, we have so and so, and someone else wanted this, and someone else." Of course, time he brought everybody a drink up, first one was, "Wants another one?" It was terrible, really, when you look back, because he was quite an elderly gentleman. He was very slow, and there was a little window there, and when he come up, you could see his head go by the window. Looking back, terrible, really. But that's what it was just something that really was interesting to go into those sort of places. But,
do you remember, Frank, we used to go in there and turn his clock back?
Oh yes. We did all sorts of things in there. I can't mention all of them. Yeah, so we can stay in there. But then there again, if you said, "Oh, I'll have a bitter," and you were on bitter or something, and then you said, "I'll have another bitter, Ernie, please. I'm out of bitter." "All right, I'll have a light ale then." "Oh, you can't mix it," he said. "I'm not saying you let you mix it." But he was a character. Of course, they had a church. I don't know how many you know. They had a Roman Catholic church upstairs in that pub. I think probably the only pub in the country that had that. And Mrs. Martin was the one there. I don't think I'd never been up there. I don't think she ever let you up there at all. But they had these Sunday services up there. But yeah, so what else have we got to?
Have you got any more questions, ladies and gentlemen?
What about this, Frank, you were here in this building?
Yeah.
I was in this building, yes. But this building used to be, well, you all know it was a grammar school when it was built, but it didn't last very long. But in our youth, it was club. No, it was a club. Boys club. Where the archives is now downstairs, that was the table tennis room. I played many, and Ron has as well, played many a game of table tennis down there. There was another small room in the middle, which had a billiard table in it, and then the big room where the library is now had a large snooker table in there, and then you could play darts and dominoes and other games in there. It was run by the vicar of those that day, and it was I think it was about a couple of days a week, Ron, was it? I don't think
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was about a couple of days a week. And youngsters up to about 16 or 17, I think, went from 5 till 7, if I remember. And then the elderly, say, from 17 onwards, they were there from 7 until 10 o'clock or something like that, I think. And yeah, it was a jolly good place to go, which there are so many places in Bampton that,
Yeah, no, I think this top floor was actually made inaccessible in the 1960s.
I was going to say, yes, they took the stairs out some long time ago, but I think there was boxing up here at one stage.
Was that? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was probably unsafe to start with.
You talk about how Bampton has changed. Yeah, well, that's how Bampton has changed. I've got a photograph at home of Broad Street, and there's one car parked, and that's my father's standard 10. And that was all. I mean, it just looks so different. But that's the same here, every village and the world over, if you like. So,
Absolutely. Well, I think that's
just one thing. Sorry, but in about this Percy Radburn. I was going to tell you about him.
Yes. I think this is a story.
Percy
Yes.
Radburn. No, it's just a laughable thing, really. I've never seen it done before. As I say, my grandfather had many fields around the village. Some he rented and some he owned. But this was a rented one, right at the top of where is it? Up by Aston Road. It's not on Aston Road, just off the Aston Road.
What, Gog Lane?
No, it's just before there. As you're going up towards Aston, you turn left, and then it's on the right. Where the houses are being built now, Anyway, they had corn and that in there, or wheat or something in there that year, and they were going round there with a binder. They didn't know combines in those days, a binder, and I know I was up there with them. There was my two uncles and this Perky Radbund, and I think another fellow there as well, because they were bailing it as well. And they were going round, and as you get more and more into the centre, the wildlife, like rabbits mainly, get further and further in until they have to run for it. Well, this one rabbit ran for it, and my uncle said my Perky Radbund was over one side of the field doing some with the bales, and there was a big long ditch alongside there, and my uncle shouts to Perky, "Hey Perky, there's a rabbit coming your way." And he see it go in the ditch, and this guy, like I say, he only had one eye. He jumped in the ditch, held his shirt open, that rabbit ran straight in there, and he caught that rabbit just. That was his meal that day or tomorrow. Yeah. But he was a character. He was so quick and that, you know. But so I say, and Grandpa had a coal business, so I used to go up with them when I was about, not working age, but say 12 or 14 or something like that. Used to go up with them and shovel the coal off the trucks that came in, and he was quite enjoy it, you know. It was, and then we'd shovel that off onto the lorry, or sometimes because he'd shovel some onto the lorry and bring it back to Castle View to tip out and then do it from there, because he'd have a delivery service going around the village and various villages. But yeah, that was quite interesting, you know. And others they would bag up straight off of the railway lorry or carriage, and take out to various places. As I say, delivery. It was a lot cheaper than it is now. We have an open fire at home, and just before the winter started, I went to there's a coal merchant at Alvescot, or on the Blackburn side of Alvescot. And I went there, I said, "How much is your coal this year?" And he says, "It's gone up a bit, £32 a bag," and that was about half hundredweight. It's a ridiculous price. But anyway, we still got a coal fire, so. Well, not a coal fire, actually, it's the coal we use just for getting it going and that, and then we have a load of logs every year, and that sees us out through the winter, so all helps.
Indeed it does, and it's a really interesting indication of how the world is different these days. Any more? Yes, please.
When you grew up as a young boy here, how many shops were there?
More than there are now.
There was a department store here at one point, wasn't there?
Yes, there was. Busby's. That was in the very early, in my early years, yes. That was down opposite the Morris Clown. There was a greengrocer, a couple of greengrocers. There was Jimmy Eels that run Eels' store. That's where the co-op is now. And he used to come round quite late at night, delivering, probably 9 or 10 o'clock he would come round and deliver the groceries, you know.
And they used to have little blue paper bags with the currency.
That's right, yeah.
And the sugar.
But he was so quick in talking. He was Jimmy Eels. He was and we had a baker come from Clanfield. He used to come round on Saturdays mainly, I think, on Saturday morning, because I know I was at home when he used to come round on a Saturday morning. Whether he'd come other days, I don't know. I was probably at school. But when he came, I always looked forward to him coming, because Gran would he'd bring the bread round. It'd still be quite red hot. And Gran would cut the crust off for me, butter it, and that. I really look forward to that. It didn't do me any harm. But I don't think. Oh, sorry, other shops. Yes, Matthews, Thompson's.
The fish shop.
Fish shop. There were so many. The bakers. Yeah,
Two cobblers.
yeah, there was. Yeah, yeah. The son of one of them is sat at the back there, Mr. Money. But there were many shops. You know, you start to think of some. I mean, there were 3 garages. There was a central garage. There was one across the other side of the square.
3 banks.
There was 2. Yeah, there were 3 banks. Yeah.
Shoemaker.
Shoemaker. Well, there was so many shops. I mean, you could go on and you keep thinking of another shop. Fish.
There was
2 dairies.
Weston, he had a milk thing, and then there was.
Who was that?
Weston. Susan
Oh,
Weston.
Weston. Yes. Yeah, that was down down
Broad Street. There was the other Roby's.
Yeah, Roby's. That's right. Up Broad Street.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you forget these things. You know, that's right. Yeah. So there was plenty of options in Bampton. Self-sufficient? No.
Well done.
Anyway,
Yes.
can
Frank, do you have any memories of who was in Westbrook House, just for a personal interest?
Oh, no,
Because we look into your windows in Castle View.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know who was
Only
there.
Miss Hobbs.
Miss
Yeah,
Hobbs
Miss
was
Hobbs
there.
is
Yeah. Miss Hobbs was there for all the time I knew her. One thing about Miss Hobbs, she was a lovely person, a good teacher. I mean, we were at Bampton School under, we started off with Miss Farmer, who was a very, quite an elderly lady, and it seemed elderly to us, obviously, as children, going there at 5-year-old. I was taken there as a 5-year-old, and I remember crying all the way from Castleview up to the school. My Auntie Dory would walk me there, and I was crying all the way. I do remember that. But I started off in Miss Farmer's class, and one thing I remember about that, dear, I'm telling you all about the book now. That we were, come to the end of the lesson, we're going back out, and I was swinging from one desk. There were little desks down there, and I was swinging from one. Your hands on one side either, swinging down there, and it got to about the second or third one, and my right hand slipped off the desk, and I went down and cut my lip. So I had to be carted up to Dr. Atkinson, who was a wonderful doctor. He was a very elderly man when I knew him. He lived in opposite the Talbot. What's the big house there? Box House, yeah. He had a surgery there, but he was a wonderful man, and I think he did become surgeon to the government or something like that, or some of the government people, I think. But because Dad used to work for him at weekends, he used to go and clean his car and do a bit of gardening for him. Another thing about that, he had an old Didion. The old doctor had an old Didion car in there, an old French Didion, and he never used it. And Dad used to say, "Oh, what are you going to do with that?" And he said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't want to let it go." Anyway, Dad went there one Saturday and it had gone. So he asked the doctor what he'd done. He said, "Oh, somebody come and give me some money for it." So I let it go, and Dad was really upset. And so am I, because I might have had it by now. But there you are. That's life, So.
Anybody else like to ask Frank a question?
All right. Can I ask just quickly, how many of you in here now look up your family history? Oh, a few, yeah, a few, yeah. I think you should all do it, quite honest. I started looking up my family history probably about 20 years ago, I suppose. And as we've previously said, I found out that most of my forebearers have come from Cope, Aston, one from Blackbourne, many in Bampton, Lou, Farringdon. We had one from Farringdon, even outside it.
Proper outside.
A real outsider. No, we had my who was that now? My grandmother, not the towns in the Portlock, not the Portlock, Cooper side. That was my father's mother. She came from Sussex, so that was about the only one from any distance at all. So but I've thoroughly enjoyed doing that. I belong to the Oxford Family History Society, who are wonderful if you get stuck on anything. And they have meetings there every first Monday of the month at Kidlington. And they, you know, you can get help from them and all sorts of things. But I've enjoyed doing my family history. It's been quite.
I think you got some help from the people in Woodstock.
Oh yeah, yes, that's from my father's. I'm very proud of my father, and when we finish this talk, you might like to come up and see just one or two of the things I brought at my father's, like his medals. He was awarded the military medal, and he was injured in the legs. He started off. I'm going to get lost track in a minute because I go off on a tangent. Yeah, he was. While he was out in France, he was injured in the legs. He started off as a cavalryman in the Queen's Own Oxfordshire Hussars. And from that, when he joined in 1915 I think it was he joined, they were sent to King's Lynn as a battalion to be prepared to go over to France. And while they were at King's Lynn, they were put to good use, but I'm not going to tell you what for. You need to look in the book for that.
That's fair enough.
It's not
Yeah.
far from Sandringham.
No, it's nothing to do with Sandringham. You'll never guess what it is, but it's
It's
in the book.
fascinating.
Yeah, this is things I've learned, as I say, going back to the archives. I used to sit at the archives. I don't do it much now because my wife is not terribly good. I mean, back 5, 6, 7 years ago probably, for about 2 or 3 years, you know, from then, I probably had 3 or 4, 5 or 6 people come in, or they've either come in and asked me. I'll tell you one. A couple came in one day when I was sat there, and I was just about to finish up. It was about 10 minutes to go before closure. And he said, "Oh, do you live in Bampton?" I said, "No, I don't." I said, "I was born here." I said, "I live at Alvescot now." Ah, he said, "Oh, you might know." He said, "Do you know anybody by the name of Plaster in the village?" I said, "No, I don't know anybody here by the Plaster." But I said, "There was an Arthur Plaster when I was a youngster." I said, "He lived in his family lived just down the road there." I said, "Down Church View." I said he was a cabinet maker and you know did work in wood. And that's the family, he said, and off he dashed out, came back in with his laptop. And he opened it up, and he put a photo up on there. And he said, "You don't by any chance know where this house is in Bampton?" He said, "I think it's called Castle View." I said, "No," I said, "I had my first 37 years on this earth in that house." And it was a picture of it in 1880. It was a wonderful picture. And you look at it then, and you look at it now, and it's hardly changed. It's amazing. Yeah. But there's others that have come in. I'm not going to tell you about those because, you know.
Well, Frank, on that note.
Just a minute. We've got.
Yeah, no.
Can I just ask
Yes, of
you,
course.
Were you and Ron in the same class at school all the way up? Bampton School,
Yes.
Amber?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't go there.
Ron left school before me though. He left to go. He went into the army. Sorry, he got kicked out.
So when you say you were both born in the same month, was that the same year?
Yes.
So you were the same
Yes.
year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you still friends with your friend
No.
Whitney? I know you're not friends with him. No, I meant.
Oh.
No, the other guy you
Yes.
mentioned,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Yes. We are. Yeah.
He could write a book as well as Frank.
Oh
I hear
yeah.
it every day and I think, my grandchildren sit there and they take it all in and I think, well, I'm going in the kitchen.
Now, as I say, I started looking at my family history and you know.
Apart from the boys' club, what other sort of social things were there in the village? I mean, did they have dancers or whist drives?
Oh, they had
Things
whist
in the
drives,
W
yes,
hall,
yes,
things like
whist
that?
drives, yeah.
Did
You
go
read the
to-
book, haven't
did you
you?
go to country?
No, I'm thinking
No,
back
we
to
used
the
to
village I grew up
We used to
in.
have a whist drive every week in the village, and the highlight was the Christmas whist drive, which was a big affair. When they would probably have about, I don't know, 25, 30 tables there, you know, and for very good prizes, which were all given, or mainly all given by gentry around the village. You'd get, you know, the first prize was a bit huge turkey, and then you'd get pheasants and hare and bottles of whiskey and God knows what else, you know. A lovely whist drive, and it used to get, I'd say, attended very well every year. But as things die out, you know, and it's like our bridge club. We've had a bridge club here for a number of years now, which I belong to, and we've just had a bridge session this afternoon, the first one for 2.5 years. In there, we all play, well, not most, but some of us play online these days on Zoom, you know. And but to play bridge at the table is just a bit more.
What about your activities, Frank, with your cycle speedway?
Oh yes, that's another thing. Yes, yeah. Well, yes, there was a cycle speedway. That was about in 1950. I think cycle speedway was the thing that kids did in those days. All around the country, it was sort of going on. So we got a team together, and we were in a league called the Four Counties League, and there was a number of villages all around. Had teams like Clanfield, Minster Lovell. They were the kings of the road, Minster Lovell. So, but Letchlade. And Clanfield, who else? Rob, Vilkins, yeah, there was Sotherup, yeah, there was probably about 8 or 9 teams, I suppose. And now the cycle speedway track that we had was where the fire station is now. Actually, right where the fire station is. And we used to enjoy that, but unfortunately, it didn't last very long. I think we started probably about 9:50 Ron.
Just after 50.
51, something like that. Yeah, probably 51.
Up until 53.
Yeah, up till 50. Only lasted about 2 years.
We won the league, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah, we won the league in 53. But as I say, we enjoyed it, but we got thrown out of the field in the end by the council, and I think because we had too many crowds there and it was a bit too noisy. We used to have a tremendous crowd, you know, come and see us, and it was good fun. It's still going on in the country, I think. It's probably more.
Yeah, they have it in a lot of places.
Yeah, I think Oxford's still got a team. I think the Horsepath Hammers. Yeah, yeah, that's the only ones I know of around here, but they do.
You did play in goal for Bampton football.
Oh, I did play in goal. Yes, I did. Oh, that's another story. I did play in goal for Bampton, yes, for a number of years. But
Only won cups.
oh yeah, we won a few cups, but we won a few cups. But I finished my footballing career when we were playing in the North Berks League. I forget who we were playing now, but somewhere out in the North Berks League we were playing. We used to play in the Whitney district, then we went over to the North Berks. But I was playing there, and we got out to this, whoever we were playing, we were kicking about before the start of the game, and unfortunately I broke my leg. That was before the start of the game, mind you. I just, someone kicked the ball over from the wing, like, you know, I went up and caught it, and when I hit the ground I didn't stop. Ankle went under me, so I did my tendons as well in, so that was the end of my football. That was about, I don't know, it was probably about 30, mid-30s or something like that. No, probably, yeah, 35, 36, so I thought that was time to pack up.
Frank, just on the football, where was it being played then? And the ground it's on, where the Bampton Town Football Club is now, the story somebody told me was that maybe Colville.
That's right.
Where was it before? And how
well, Bampton. I'll just tell you now. Bampton is probably the only local football club around this area, anyway, that owns their own field, their own ground. And you're right. Colonel Colville, I think. Major Colville.
Mrs. Colville.
Sorry?
There's one the other side of the light at Colville's. and the next.
Oh yes, you used to play down, that's right, on the Clanfield Road,
And down
and up by the new,
that
by,
housing estates being
where the old, no, next
It used to
to,
be at Bampton by the fir trees, didn't it?
yes, yes,
Football club.
and it used,
that was the field that Perky caught the rabbit in, yes. But we also, we had a couple of years up past the police station,
yeah.
just going out of Bampton towards Whitney on the left hand side.
Yeah.
That was a very wet field.
Could I just help you on the Mrs. Colville one? Mrs. Colville actually lent the money to the trustees of Bampton Football Club to buy that.
To buy it?
She didn't donate it. And the trustees, there were 4 of them at that time, they raised the money to pay Mrs. Colville back. And the money was raised so quickly with the help of the community, in fact, that Mrs. Colville...
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, Mrs. Colville for all of the interest that was due,
Yeah.
and just say...
But the club still owns that.
They still own it,
yes.
yes.
Yeah, and there's probably not any others around this area that owns it. No.
£1,600.
Yeah, there you are. It's like my father when he bought his house in Broad Street. I mean, he lived there with his mother for a number of years, but then he bought it in 1949, £225.
Yeah.
I've got the receipt, so. But
Right. Well, Frank, thank you very much. It is fascinating.
Well, I think
and
that's,
listen, you've
that's
given us a lot of information and a
Well, I
lot
should think
more
of-
in your book.
I should think of a lot more when I get home, I
Of course you will.
I should go to bed tonight, I think, not down, more than that.
Don't worry, because your lovely
No,
book
it's-
is full of information.
No, it's been fun doing it, you know, and
Yeah.
you probably all know, but for the sales of the book, they all go to the archives, so nothing coming to me at all.
Well,
I don't want any.
that is generous beyond belief. I just want to say how important this is. You've been filmed by Janet here, because you're going down in posterity here. Part of the archive. And your book
I'm not
will as
charged for
well.
that. I'm not charged for that.
And you talk about the importance of all this, and you are completely right. It is absolutely critical that we keep a record of the way life changes and the way life goes. And just imagine what people are going to be like watching you in 100 years' time talk about your life 70 years ago. It's just fantastic, and I'm really grateful to you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the shop downstairs is open briefly. Oh, it isn't, Jen, it's just...
I just wanted to say, this has been fantastic. This is what this is absolutely all about.
Yeah.
And we want to capture, all of you have got some fantastic memories, and I might open up a pub up here, I think. just to get you to sit round in a group and discuss your memories, and we'll record it, because this is what the archive is all about.
Absolutely.
And
quite right.
if any of you are happy to come in and have a chat about all your memories and things like that, we'd be more than happy to do that. We'll just sit and chat like these two, and it would be fantastic, because that's what that's what we aim to do, and capture all this information. And it's much easier just to talk than it is to do a book. So thank you, Frank, for all the effort into the book.
Absolutely.
But any of you who want to come and do this, you'd be more than welcome.
I'm just going to read the last line that I've got on my notes down here.
Right, too.
It's a warning message, actually. For those of you buying the book, I must warn you, there is a photo of me naked.
Thank you very much, Frank.